My name is Evelyn Carter, and I'm 62 years old. What I'm about to tell you still shakes me to my core. They say when you're in a coma, you can't hear, you can't feel, you can't think. But I heard everything. Every lie, every laugh, every whispered word they thought was buried beneath my silence. It all began in the cold white stillness of St. Mercy Hospital. Machines hummed beside me, tracing the thin line between my life and death. My family, the people I raised, the ones I would have died for, gathered around my bed, pretending to mourn. But one night, a storm rolled in. The nurse on duty, poor thing, must have been exhausted. She forgot to turn off the intercom before she left the room. And that mistake changed everything. Through the speaker above my head, I heard the voices of the people I loved most. My son Marcus, my own sister Laverne, laughing, planning, talking about my funeral while I was still breathing. They talked about the flowers, the obituary, and who would get the house on Magnolia Street. My house, the one I worked 2 jobs for, cleaned other people's floors for. I lay there, unable to move, unable to scream, while they spoke of my death like it was already written. I remember Marcus saying, "Mama wouldn't want to suffer, she'd want us to let her go," and Laverne's reply still burns in my chest. "She's had her time, it's our turn now." Our turn. In that moment I felt something in me crack, not my heart, no, that broke years ago, but my spirit. It was as if the ancestors themselves stirred inside me, whispering, "Stay still, Evelyn, let the truth walk its way home." So I did. I listened, every cruel word, every greedy plan. They thought I was gone, but the Lord had other ideas. Because what they didn't know was that justice sometimes wakes up before the body does. The first thing I remember is the hum, that low, steady sound that filled every inch of the hospital room. It wasn't peaceful, it was haunting, the rhythm of machines breathing for me, reminding me I wasn't gone yet. My body felt heavy, pinned under invisible weight, but my mind floated somewhere above it. I could feel people moving around me, their footsteps, their sighs. It was strange, how life carried on like I was already a memory. I wanted to scream, but my voice stayed buried under that steady mechanical heartbeat. The light in the room never changed. Day and night bled together under those pale fluorescent bulbs. I used to think hospitals were holy places, but now they felt like waiting rooms for ghosts. Every time the door creaked open, I hoped to hear a voice that sounded like love, but all I got were polite murmurs, tired updates, and forced prayers. They came, they stared, and they left. My life had become a quiet performance of sympathy, played out for no one but the walls and machines. I could feel the air shift when they entered. My family. The temperature dropped and the energy changed. Even half-conscious, I could recognize it. That kind of silence that hides things. They didn't touch my hand, not really, just stood close enough to look caring, far enough to stay detached. My son's cologne, too sharp, too new, filled the room. My sister's perfume, heavy, almost choking. It was the scent of people who dressed up for appearances, not affection. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet unease started to stir. Time stretched in strange ways inside that room. Minutes dragged like hours, and hours disappeared without warning. I'd slip into darkness, then rise again into muffled voices and shuffling feet. Nurses whispered, machines beeped, doors opened and shut. Somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, I realized something chilling. I wasn't fully gone. I was trapped between worlds, hearing every sound, feeling every presence. It wasn't sleep, and it wasn't life. It was limbo, and in that limbo, silence wasn't empty. It was alive, holding secrets, waiting for a crack to open. I started counting breaths. It was the only thing I could control. In, out, in, out. Each breath was a protest. A small rebellion against the idea that I was already gone. My mind tried to pull memories forward. My son's first steps, laughter in the old kitchen, Sunday mornings that smelled like biscuits and gospel. But even those memories felt distant, fading under the sterile hum of this place. I kept asking myself, is this what dying feels like? But deep down, something told me, this wasn't the end yet. One afternoon, the blinds rattled against the window as thunder rolled outside. The wind howled, pressing against the glass like it wanted in. The world beyond that room was alive, wild, unpredictable. Inside, everything was still. Too still. I felt the first drop of fear crawl through me, cold and sharp. It wasn't the fear of death, it was the fear of not knowing who was standing near me. What were they saying when they thought I couldn't hear? My body couldn't move, but my instincts, they were wide awake. That's when I began to notice things. The way they avoided looking at me. The way their voices dropped when the nurse left. The faint tremor in my son's tone when he spoke my name. It was wrong, all of it. They weren't grieving, they were waiting for something final. For silence to become permanent. My chest tightened as I realized that death wasn't the scariest thing in that room. No, it was the living, and somewhere deep in my spirit, a whisper rose up. The storm hasn't come yet, Evelyn, but it's on its way. The storm outside had settled into a low growl like the sky was holding its breath. The rain beat against the windows in uneven bursts, echoing the rhythm of my heart monitor. The nurse had just finished checking my IV and muttered something about grabbing coffee before her shift ended. She was gentle, I remember that. But she forgot one thing, the intercom switch. I heard the faint click of it staying on, a small mistake that would open a door no one was meant to open. For a while, it was quiet. Just the sound of the wind and the soft hiss of oxygen through the tubes. Then came a voice, familiar, steady, too casual for a hospital room. So, what's the plan, my son? Marcus. That voice I used to sing to sleep now sounded sharp, rehearsed. Another voice joined. My sister Laverne. Her tone was smooth as silk, but under it I could hear the steel. We move forward. The doctor said it's just a matter of time. We should start arranging things. Arranging what? My funeral? The air in the room seemed to tighten. I couldn't move, but inside every part of me screamed. Their words crawled through the intercom like poison. Marcus laughed, low and nervous. You think we'll get the house? She never said who it goes to. Laverne's voice snapped back. Of course it's ours. Who else would she give it to? We've been here for her. I wanted to shout that I was still here, that I wasn't a corpse. But my lips stayed still, locked in the silence of the half-dead. My only weapon was listening. They talked like accountants, not family. Funeral costs, bank accounts, insurance policies. My life is reduced to paperwork. I remember the scrape of Laverne's nails on the table as she said, Don't tell the others yet. The sooner this is done, the cleaner it'll be. Marcus hesitated. You think she'd forgive us? A pause. Then Laverne's laugh, that hollow, cruel laugh that didn't belong to the sister I once knew. Forgive? She won't even know. The sound of it cracked something inside me. Betrayal doesn't explode, it leaks in slow, suffocating drops. My body began to respond to the panic. The heart monitor beeped faster, matching the rhythm of their greed. I could feel my pulse fighting against the sedation, my spirit rising like something feral trying to break through. I had trusted them with everything, my savings, my home, my peace. And there they were, planning my end like it was a business transaction. The rain outside grew heavier, hammering the glass as if nature itself was listening too. I swear, even the storm paused to hear the truth unravel. Somewhere beyond the voices, a nurse laughed down the hall, and for a split second, the room filled with ordinary sounds again. Footsteps, drawers, chatter. But it didn't last. Laverne's voice lowered to a whisper. Marcus, listen, when the time comes, don't fight it. Sign the papers. It's what's best. What's best? For who? I wanted to grab her, to make her look me in the eyes and say that again, but I couldn't. My body lay still as stone, while inside me a fire was catching flame, the kind that doesn't burn skin, it burns truth. And then something strange happened. The lights flickered, faint at first, then bright enough to startle them. I could hear Marcus shifting nervously. You feel that? He said. It's just the storm, Laverne snapped. But it wasn't. It was something else, something that crawled up through the air vents and wrapped itself around me. I could feel a pulse that didn't belong to me. The room seemed to breathe. The intercom hissed louder, and in that static, I heard another whisper. Soft, ancient, almost human. They think you're gone, Evelyn. Let them show their hands. The voices didn't stop that night. They came and went like shifting winds through the intercom. Soft, cruel, deliberate. Every word was a blade turning slow. My son's tone grew lighter the longer he spoke, like he was already living free of me. I'd once prayed over that boy when he had nothing but dreams and scraped knees. Now he was dreaming of my death. The sound of his laugh, that easy, hollow laugh, kept replaying in my skull, until it didn't sound human anymore. It sounded like betrayal with a heartbeat. I started remembering every moment I'd ignored, the side glances, the missed calls, the way he'd rush conversations about money. Funny how the truth hides in plain sight, until it's too late to do anything but feel it. I'd always thought love could drown out greed, that family meant protection. But lying there, a prisoner in my own body, I realized love had made me blind. Maybe that's what betrayal feeds on. People like me too forgiving to see the knife being sharpened behind our backs. Somewhere in the distance, thunder cracked open the night, the windows rattled and a flicker of lightning washed the ceiling in white. For a second, I thought I saw my reflection in the metal of the IV stand, pale, motionless, eyes half closed but burning from inside. That woman staring back wasn't weak anymore. She looked like someone was waiting, watching. A chill moved through me and I realized it wasn't fear. It was awareness, the kind that sits heavy on your chest when you finally understand the game being played around your silence. The intercom hissed again, and I caught another piece of their plan. Laverne was saying she'd already called a lawyer, someone discreet. She was worried about the nurse. If Evelyn wakes up, she started. But Marcus cut her off. She won't. He said it like a fact, not a hope, just flat, final. My heart clenched against that word, won't. It echoed through the room, bouncing off the sterile walls, won't. Like a curse. Like a door slamming shut. And yet, somewhere deep inside, I felt the tiniest spark that whispered, watch me. I thought of all the words I'd never said. The apologies I owed, the stories I hadn't told. Regret crept in through the same cracks their greed had opened. But then another voice, faint and calm, seemed to hum through the intercom's static, not theirs but mine, buried deep inside. You're not done yet, Evelyn. It wasn't defiance, it was true. The kind of truth that crawls out from the soul when everything else is stripped away. I began to understand that my silence wasn't my weakness. It was my weapon. The machines beeped slower, steady, as if sinking to a rhythm only I could hear. My body was broken, but my mind had become sharper, colder. I replayed every moment, every word, memorizing them. The betrayal became evidence. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, but I was collecting truths, like ammunition. I realized something else too. When you can't talk, people reveal themselves. Silence makes liars brave. And mine had given them all the rope they needed to hang themselves. Then came the moment that everything was opening. The nurse returned, humming softly as she tidied the room. She didn't notice the intercom still on, didn't hear the tail end of Laverne's laughter before it cut out, but she stopped, just for a second, and looked at me. Her eyes narrowed, studying my face. You hear me, don't you? She whispered. My pulse jumped. One tear slid down my cheek, slow and deliberate. Her hand trembled. Lord, she said, what are they doing to you? And for the first time since the coma began, I felt the shift. Someone finally saw me. Not the patient, not the dying woman, but me. The next morning, sunlight pushed through the blinds in thin, dusty lines. I couldn't open my eyes, but I could feel its warmth sliding over my skin, gentle, almost forgiving. It carried me backward, into the years I'd buried beneath survival. Memories flooded in uninvited. The smell of burnt coffee in a small kitchen. My son's laughter bouncing through a 2-room apartment. My hands are scrubbing other people's floors, while praying for a better day. I could see it all, vivid as a movie. Every memory felt like both a gift and a wound reopening at once. I remembered the first winter after Marcus was born. The heater broke, and I wrapped him in 3 blankets, humming him to sleep while my own fingers went numb. I used to whisper, Mama's gonna make it better, even when I had no clue how. I took cleaning jobs at dawn and nursing shifts at night. My back hurt, my feet ached, but I never let him see. I thought if I kept pushing, one day he'd understand. One day he'd look at me and say, "You did good, Mama." But lying there now, I realized that day never came. The hospital's rhythmic beeping turned into the ticking of clocks I used to race against. Every shift was survival. Every dollar stretched until it screamed. I'd pawned my wedding ring one spring just to keep the lights on. I told Laverne about it. She cried and said she'd pay me back. She never did. I didn't hold it against her then. That's what family does, right? We cover for each other. But now I see it clearly. All those times I saved her, she was just learning how to use me better. The flashbacks came in waves. The smell of bleach on my hands, the ache in my knees after mopping the church floor, the taste of instant noodles after 12-hour shifts. But in every memory, there was love. Love stitched between pain and purpose. I used to sit by the window at night, watching streetlights flicker on Magnolia Street, whispering to my mother's spirit, "I'm doing it, Mama. I'm building something that'll last." I thought that house would be my legacy, proof I'd made something out of nothing. Now it's what they're fighting over like vultures. I remembered the day I signed the deed to that house. My palms were sweating. The realtor smiled like I'd done something impossible, and maybe I had. A black woman in her 40s, with no college degree, buying property in a neighborhood that once told her she didn't belong. I stood in that empty living room and cried. The echo of my own sobs sounded like freedom. I promised myself that the house would stay in the family, a safe place for the next generation. Never imagined it'd become the prize they'd steal from my grave. Sometimes I'd wonder if all that love had spoiled them. Maybe I'd made life too easy. I'd taught Marcus to dream, but I never taught him how to fight. I shielded him from struggle like it was poison, not knowing it was the only medicine that builds character. Now I see him trying to take shortcuts through my legacy, the same one built on broken bones and sleepless nights. It's strange how life teaches you lessons when you can't even move. Every word he said through that intercom became a reminder of what happens when love forgets to set boundaries. The machines beeped steady, and the air felt heavy, like the past itself was sitting on my chest. Somewhere deep inside, a thought surfaced. Maybe this coma wasn't punishment. Maybe it was a reflection, forced by something greater. I'd spent my whole life fixing, giving, forgiving, but maybe now, I was meant to see. See who they truly were. See what love without respect creates. And as that realization settled, something inside me hardened. Not anger, not hate, just resolve. I wasn't done yet. My story wasn't ending in silence. That night, as rain drummed against the hospital window, I felt my memories pull me somewhere darker. I remembered sitting at my old oak desk months before I fell sick, a pen trembling between my fingers. My lawyer had warned me. People get strange around inheritance. I laughed it off then. I thought love was stronger than greed. The papers in front of me were meant to be my last act of care. My will, my legacy. I wanted to leave something behind that said, "I loved you enough to think of your future." I didn't realize it would test their souls instead. The air in the room shifted as thunder rolled outside. I could almost hear the echo of that day in my head. The scratch of the pen, the rustle of pages, the faint smell of lavender oil I used to calm my nerves. I'd rewritten everything quietly, alone. Not out of suspicion, but because I wanted to surprise them. I added new clauses, fair and kind, to make sure everyone was taken care of, Marcus, Laverne, even the grandkids. But now as I lay there listening to their plotting, that generosity felt like a knife I'd handed them myself. I remembered how Marcus smiled when I told him not to worry about money. "You'll be fine when the time comes," I'd said. He'd hugged me, called me his blessing. Now I could still hear his voice through the intercom, smooth and greedy. "We should sell the house before the taxes pile up." It hit me like a cold slap. He wasn't mourning, he was managing assets. My own son talking about me like a liability. The sound of rain outside grew louder, and I swear it felt like the world itself was trying to drown out their words. That's when I remembered something I'd done, almost by accident. A change in the will that no one knew about. My lawyer had called it a private clause, one meant to be opened only if something seemed suspicious about my death. At the time I'd added it because I'd seen too many families torn apart by greed. I thought it was just a precaution, now it felt like prophecy. I'd left instructions, locked in a sealed envelope with the lawyer and one other person, someone they'd never suspect. My nurse Claire. I'd met Claire years before when she was a trainee at St. Mercy. I'd helped her pay for her daughter's medicine after she lost her husband. She never forgot that kindness. So when I got sick, she requested to be assigned to my care. The family thought it was a coincidence. It wasn't. I'd trusted her with my last secret. The copy of the will that no one else knew existed. I could feel her presence now, moving quietly in that hospital, unaware that the storm outside wasn't just weather, it was the sound of truth, getting ready to strike. As the night stretched, the air grew heavy with electricity. Every beat from the monitor echoed like a heartbeat of fate. The greed that filled the intercom hours earlier had started to shift something inside me. I no longer felt helpless. I felt aware, like I was sitting inside a test designed by something divine. My family's betrayal wasn't the ending, it was exposure. The truth of who they'd become was now undeniable. And deep in the quiet I made a vow without words: when I wake, everything will come to light. Every mask, every lie. I could sense movement near the door. The nurse entered softly, humming a hymn under her breath, the same one my mother used to sing. It was as if the ancestors were stepping into the room through her. She adjusted the blankets, her hand brushing mine. I felt it, the faintest squeeze in my fingers. My body couldn't move, but my spirit surged. She paused, looked at my hand and whispered, "I know you hear me." My pulse steadied. In that moment, the will I wrote in love became my weapon of truth. They thought I was gone. They were wrong. The hospital felt different after midnight. The hum of machines softened and the storm outside fell into a slow rhythm, like a giant heartbeat. Claire walked in, her white shoes barely making a sound on the cold floor. She carried a clipboard pressed against her chest, but her eyes, tired and glassy, searched my face for something she couldn't name. For days she'd told herself I was just another patient, but tonight she could feel it. Something in that room wasn't just alive, it was awake. She leaned over to adjust the oxygen tube, her fingers brushing my wrist. My skin was warm, too warm. She frowned, checked the monitor. Everything normal. Still a pulse of energy passed between us, like static before lightning. Her breath caught. She whispered my name softly. "Miss Evelyn," half expecting silence. But my eyelids trembled. It was slight, almost nothing. Still Claire froze, her heart pounding. The storm growled outside, wind scraping against the window like fingernails. And somewhere deep inside me, something old began to stir. For the next few nights, strange things kept happening. The temperature in my room would drop suddenly, the lights flickering for no reason. Once Claire swore she heard faint humming, an old gospel tune she didn't recognize, echoing through the intercom. When she checked, it stopped. She began carrying her Bible in her pocket. Every time she entered the room, she'd whisper a small prayer, asking for guidance. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just medicine anymore. It was something spiritual, something watching, waiting. One morning, when she came to change my IV, she noticed a single tear sliding from the corner of my eye. She gasped. "Oh Lord," she whispered, grabbing a tissue. But when she wiped it, another followed. I could hear her heart pounding through her touch. My body couldn't move, but I felt her faith pressing close, strong, trembling, desperate. She leaned closer, whispering again. "If you can hear me, Miss Evelyn, hold on. God ain't done with you yet." I wanted to scream, "I know," but my mouth stayed still. "My spirit, though," it shouted. That night, Claire sat by my bed long after her shift ended. The hospital halls were quiet, save for distant wheels squeaking down linoleum floors. She watched the storm outside, lightning flashing over the wet parking lot. In her mind, she saw flashes of her own pain, her husband's funeral, her daughter's sickness, the kindness I'd shown her years ago. It hit her then. Maybe this was her moment to repay a debt, to stand for someone who once stood for her. She took my hand and whispered, "If they mean you harm, Lord, don't let them win." The next morning she caught them again, Marcus and Laverne whispering near the doorway, their voices dripping with guilt and impatience. Claire lingered outside, pretending to check charts. Marcus said, "If she doesn't make it this week, we'll just move things forward." Claire's stomach turned. She backed away quietly, every instinct screaming. Something evil hung in their tone, not demonic, but human. Greed had a smell, a sound, a rhythm. She felt it choking the air. That's when she knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. That evening, when she entered my room again, she placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "I'm your witness." Then she reached for the intercom, pressing a small switch at the base, the same one she'd forgotten that night. The red light blinked on again. But this time, it wasn't an accident. She wanted the world to hear the truth. She turned toward me and said softly, "If you're meant to come back, let it be now." Outside, thunder cracked like a voice from the heavens. And for the first time since I'd fallen into the coma, my fingers moved. The room grew impossibly still. Every machine seemed to pause between beeps. Claire stood frozen beside me, her hand gripping mine as lightning split the night outside. My pulse flickered across the monitor, faint, but steady. Then something inside me loosened. I felt myself lift, slow and weightless, drifting above the hospital bed. The body below looked small, fragile, like a shell I'd shed. The world blurred at the edges. The storm outside faded into a hum, replaced by the deep sound of wind, but not from earth. This wind carried whispers. I drifted through a dim space that felt endless. The air shimmered with gold dust, warm and alive. Out of the glow, shapes began to form, faces I hadn't seen in decades. My mother standing tall, her Sunday hat glowing with light. My grandmother, humming a hymn she used to sing while braiding my hair. Behind them, others, ancestors I only knew from family stories. They stood in a half circle, calm and watching. My chest tightened. "Mama." I whispered. My voice didn't come from my mouth. It came from somewhere deeper, somewhere eternal. My mother smiled gently. "You done carried too much, Evelyn." Her voice rolled through the space like thunder wrapped in honey. "You gave until you had nothing left. Now the Lord say it's time for truth to walk." I wanted to reach for her, to ask why this was happening, why my family had turned cold. But before I could speak, another voice rose, older, stronger, the voice of my grandmother. "What's done in the dark, don't stay there, child. Justice got long legs. It don't run fast, but it never stops walkin'." I saw flashes then, scenes of my life replaying like lightning. Me as a young mother, holding Marcus as a baby, promising him he'd never know hunger. Me saving Laverne from losing her apartment, signing checks I couldn't afford. Me staying up late to finish sewing a quilt for my mother's funeral. Each moment burned bright, then vanished into the next. "You gave them love," my mother said. "But love don't mean blindness. You can forgive a thief, baby, but you still gotta change the locks." Her words hit me deep, truth and sorrow tangled together. I wanted to stay there. The warmth, the peace, it wrapped around me like home. But then I saw something behind them. A door, old wood, carved with strange symbols glowing faintly. The wind shifted, carrying whispers of my name, not from the ancestors, but from the living. I heard Claire's voice, trembling with faith, "Come back, Miss Evelyn." And beneath it, Marcus and Laverne, their greedy chatter continuing, even now. I turned back to my mother, tears burning in my spirit. "They're not done," I said. "They think I'm gone." My mother nodded. "Then show 'em what God remembers." A flash of light burst from her hand, and suddenly the space shook. I felt a rush of heat flood my chest, the same fire that once made me fight for everything I had. The ancestors began to fade, but their voices lingered like smoke. When you wake, don't speak anger, speak truth. The wicked don't fear fire. They fear light. The golden air dissolved into darkness. The hum of machines crept back in, growing louder until it filled my skull. I gasped. Or maybe it was my body gasping. My spirit slammed back into flesh. The first thing I felt was the sting of air in my lungs. Then sound, the faint crackle of the intercom, still recording. My eyes fluttered open, the fluorescent light above piercing through the fog. Claire's face came into view, her hand still on mine, tears shining in her eyes. "She's back," she whispered. I wanted to speak, but my throat only released a soft sound. Still, inside me, I carried the thunder of generations. I wasn't just awake, I was sent. Justice was no longer waiting, it was already in motion. The first thing I saw was light, blinding. Pure, almost violent in its brightness. It pierced through the fog of my mind like a blade. I blinked hard, trying to focus. Shapes blurred, then sharpened. The white ceiling, the flicker of a fluorescent bulb, the slow rhythm of the heart monitor beside me. Each beep sounded like a countdown to something holy. Claire stood frozen at the foot of my bed, one hand over her mouth, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a whisper of air, the kind that feels more prayer than sound. The storm outside had grown wild. Thunder cracked so loud it rattled the IV poles. Wind slammed against the glass windows, howling through the seams. The lights flickered again. On, off, on. The intercom buzzed with static. Claire turned toward it, startled, as the machine hissed to life on its own. Then voices. Familiar voices. Marcus's laugh. Laverne's cold tone. Their words poured through the speaker, echoing in the room like ghosts made of sound. "Mama wouldn't want to suffer," Marcus said. "She'd want us to let her go." Laverne's reply came sharp, smug. "She's had her time. It's our turn now." Claire stumbled back, eyes wide in disbelief. The intercom wasn't connected to the waiting room anymore. She'd turned it off hours ago. Yet there it was, their conversation replaying word for word. Every lie, every laugh, every ounce of betrayal dripping from their mouths. My heart thudded weakly, but my mind sharpened with every syllable. God wasn't just showing me their sin, He was broadcasting it. The truth they buried in whispers was now screaming through the walls of St. Mercy Hospital. Doctors burst through the door, shouting, rushing toward me. "She's awake," someone yelled. "She's responsive." Hands touched my arms, adjusting tubes, checking vitals. I couldn't look away from the intercom. The voices played on, their greed, their plans, their mockery. Then silence. Static filled the room again, followed by a faint, almost melodic hum. It wasn't the machines, it was a hymn. The same one my grandmother used to sing. "Walk in the light, beautiful light." The sound floated through the air, calm and steady, even as chaos swirled around me. Claire caught my gaze and whispered, "They're hearing it too." Out in the hallway, nurses had stopped moving, their faces turned toward the speakers. The entire floor of St. Mercy fell into eerie quiet, every radio, every intercom, alive with the same recording. My family's betrayal echoed across the hospital. Their words, their shame, carried like a sermon. Claire stepped closer, gripping my hand tight. "You ain't alone anymore," she said, voice trembling. "The truth's out now." I felt a rush of strength fill my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive, not just breathing but burning. Within the hour, Marcus and Laverne arrived. Their faces were pale, eyes darting between me and the intercom speaker that still crackled faintly. They tried to smile, to fake relief, but their fear betrayed them. I looked at them, truly looked, and saw strangers. Not my blood, not my love, but people blinded by greed. I didn't need to speak. My silence was louder than any word I could say. Behind them, Claire stood like a guardian, her presence steady, and above us all, the storm began to fade. as if heaven itself had delivered its message and moved on. When the doctors left, the room fell quiet again. The hum of machines, the faint smell of antiseptic, the steady pulse in my wrist, all reminders that I'd come back for a reason. My eyes drifted to the window, where the first streaks of dawn painted the sky, light after the storm. I thought of what the ancestors told me. Justice walks slow, but it never loses its way. I had walked through death, seen truth, and returned with it clinging to me like second skin. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of reckoning.